What's up, YouTube? Garrett here, the Move.W.Murph channel, and I am a thru hiker. I'm a thru hiker because I am done with TA, finally. I've walked across New Zealand. Oh boy, you know, the last month of that just really dragged on. There's a lot of logistic challenges with getting this trail done. Hurdles to jump with lockdowns and COVID, and 2021-22 was a pretty odd year to be on TA. You could ask anyone. We were all over the place. There was no continuous hiking bubble. There's none of that. So this was a super weird year to be doing the TA. And in this video, I'm gonna talk about 8 things I wish I knew before I started this. Because being a foreigner, coming to New Zealand for the first time and exploring it via trail was logistically not the easiest thing I've ever done. This is some of the stuff I learned. Coming to the trail, I knew this trail is muddy. There's mud all over it. It rains all the time. New Zealand is very green. What they don't tell you about how green it is that in order for it to be green, it needs to rain constantly. So there's mud. Mud is a problem. I knew that there was a lot of road walking. This is a new trail. It's 10 years old, and they have all sorts of problems with tree diseases and people spreading things around. So I knew road walking was going to be an issue. I knew that COVID was going to be an issue, and I knew that the North Island was going to cost more than the South Island. I was going to get a lot more of a city experience while I was walking up on the North Island. I don't really plan well. I just buy the gear and go. Basically, with the minimal research I'd done, that's what I found out, was those things. Road walking, kind of expensive on the North Island, and tons of mud. And they consider this to be one of the hardest thru hikes in the world. Whether it is or is not, I cannot say. This is the only thru hike I've done. So I've done sections of some other trails, but let's get into it. These are the 8 things that I learned about the TA while walking it. Number 1, how to say the trail name. Te Araroa. Te Araroa. Te Araroa. When I initially started walking this trail, embarrassingly enough, I was saying, the Te Araroa Trail, sir? I'm looking for the Te Araroa Trail. We didn't know how to say it. It's pronounced Te Araroa. Araroa. You get the idea. You have to roll those R's. Not so great at it. In the English language, the United States, we don't roll very many R's. So, Te Araroa. Try it out yourself. I'd say the first 3 weeks that I walked this trail, I continuously said it out loud in order to practice it. Maori language is used vastly across New Zealand. They say all sorts of Maori phrases. They are including the native language back into some of the English and a part of the culture here in New Zealand. So maybe brush up a little bit on that. Number 2 is koa. Koa is Maori for gift. If someone is helping you out on the TA, maybe giving you a spot to crash, or they're a trail angel, or they've built a cabin, they'll give you a little donation box, and that donation is called koa. If someone is asking for koa, they want 5 to 10 New Zealand dollars or some type of service exchange, but generally money. There'll be a trail angel. They have built a cabin on their property. You don't really interact with them or see them, that there's a donation box, and on their Facebook post, they're gonna ask for koa. Maybe someone gives you a ride around a river. Maybe you take a hitch, whatever it might be. They may ask for koa, and koa means donation. And depending on the service in which they give you, if you had a great night stay in their cabin, it's kind of up to you whether you leave koa, how much koa to leave, but generally up to $10. And if it's beyond $10, they're probably going to specify koa. K-O-H-A. Gift or donation. Tip number 3. The trail conditions, not good. We knew it'd be muddy. They have never heard of a switchback here in New Zealand. That's not a thing. I think maybe 2 instances there was a switchback. One of the first examples of trail that I saw that wasn't some road walking was a place called the Araroas, and there are a lot of slip and fall accidents there. We were class 3 and class 4 scrambling for hours. There were plenty of no-fall zones. Things were slick. It gets a little crazy. There's down trees all the time, and there are 2 departments that take care of the TA as a whole. One is DOC, which is the Department of Conservation here in New Zealand, and then the other one is the TA Trust. TA Trust maintains 60% of the trail, and they have very little funding. So the trail conditions vary widely. If you are on a great walk like the Tongariro Crossing, excellent trail conditions. Quite wide, very flat, gravel down. If you are on a farm track that's cutting you between two cities that no one ever walks down, you're bush bashing, you're slipping, you're sliding. There are thorn bushes, you're in rivers, in and out of rivers all the time. A lot of times they just use the river as the trail, and you'll just follow the river for 3 or 4 kilometers. So trail conditions, not ideal. I thought I was gonna be able to cover a lot more ground and my average distance covered per day would be much greater. And at the end, I averaged about 15 miles per day, which took a lot of effort, especially in some areas. Some days you're on the road, you're doing pavement, you're cruising along. Other days, I had one section of trail that took me about 5.5, 6 hours to go 5 kilometers, which is 3.1 miles. Horrendous trail conditions. Number 4, hitchhiking is very normal, widely accepted, and very easy. I hitchhiked all the time. I generally didn't wait more than 20 minutes to get a ride, and I met a lot of really great people along the way while I was doing it. One of the longest hitches that I did was an 8-hour drive by car, and it was from Invercargill, down at the bottom, up to Christchurch so I could catch a flight up to the North Island. I met so many great people that day, grabbing rides, meeting. It was just so much fun. It's super normal to see hitchhikers here. For one thing, if you're gonna hitchhike, it's best to do it in a group of 2 or more, but not too many where you can't get a ride. But generally, I never felt creeped out or weirded out by anyone at all. I'm thinking about making a tips for hitchhiking video, so if you guys wanna see that, leave a comment below. We saw tons of people on the trail that would just skip giant sections of the trail. I think I skipped only 20 kilometers and that was due to an injury. Generally, I would not want to pay for a shuttle service or a bus or a taxi. I would just stick my thumb out and I'd make the journey. So hitchhiking is very reliable means of transportation in this country versus the United States, for example. Number 5, this trail, not just walking. There's various modes of transportation you need to get involved with to get through this entire thing. Not just the transportation up to the trailhead, nor the transportation from the bottom of the trail. The Wanganui River, you do a 4-day canoe trip in the middle of the thru hike, which was so much fun. It's also a great walk. There's other sections in the South Island. There's 2 enormous rivers, huge braided rivers that are extremely dangerous, over private property, and quite challenging to cross. So you need to book shuttles to get around that. There's another section of road down near Queenstown where they expect you to take a shuttle all the way around it. It's a logistically challenging trail where you're going to book kayaks, canoes, ferries, shuttles, or hitch. And that's how I found out it's so easy to hitchhike in this country. Not only were people suggesting that I do it, but oftentimes I didn't have the money or want to kayak or take the shuttle. When I went to cross the Rakaya and the Rangitata, the shuttle was $100 per river per person. That's $200. I didn't want to pay that. So instead, I hitchhiked. A lot of other people did too. In order to maneuver around some of these larger obstacles, it was just, I had to hitch or book a shuttle. There's plenty of information in the trail notes about how to do these things, but I had no idea that it would be so hard to find my way across New Zealand. I figured it'd just be that little section in between the North and the South Island, but nope. Shuttles, all sorts of other things. So yeah, not a continuous trail. Gonna have to book a bunch of different methods of transportation. Number 6, camping is not free, almost ever. They have laws in New Zealand surrounding camping outside. Unless you're in a self-contained vehicle, which contains a toilet, you're not really allowed to do it in most places. DOC, the Department of Conservation, and the Trust have organized certain places that are free to camp for TA walkers, but they're few and far between. But generally they contain a long drop or a pit toilet, somewhere you can go to the bathroom, because people have been extremely irresponsible with their human waste over the years, and the TA walkers have become a bit of a nuisance. So you need to find places to camp, especially on the North Island. You're gonna sleep in holiday parks or private residences. There's lots of trail angels along the way, but the most expensive holiday park I saw on the trail was $47 a night per person, because camping is also charged per person and not per tent. So camping is not free. There's a hut pass for the South Island. It's called the DOC Hut Pass. It's a great value. There's 90 huts on the trail. You sleep in maybe 50 of them, maybe 40, and the hut pass is $100. So that covers most of the South Island. And you're allowed to camp outside the huts, but generally you're gonna want to sleep inside. But on the North Island, you're paying for camping all of the time. And that got really frustrating, especially when I ended up doing a lot of big days on the North Island in order to avoid some of the higher fees for camping. So we saw some that were $47, $37, $32, $20. 20 per person, still a lot just to set up a tent. I spent way more money on accommodation than I would have expected. And on the North Island alone, I spent double the amount of money that I spent on the South Island. South Island is very remote, and there's tons of spots to stay, like those dock huts. Highly recommend getting the dock hut pass. It's very worth it. You're going to need it. And yeah, you're camping. It's not going to be free. And try not to make the TA look bad. If you go out and do this trail, try not to wild camp too much. And if you are wild camping or stealth camping especially, clean up after yourself and don't leave a mess. Number 7. A light backpack is extremely controversial. I had a 7.5 kilo backpack. That was my base weight. My partner's was 6.5. We got comments constantly. It was always these like, oh, well, at least you're doing it kind of comments, or maybe if it rains, you're gonna die. We didn't have the lightest setup by any means, but we did hike with a guy for a while whose base weight was 18 kilos. It's really common to see people carrying 70, 80 liter backpacks, completely full, all sorts of extra stuff. The culture in New Zealand, just a little bit different around tramping and hiking. It's considered a little more rough and tough. We learned that from the trail conditions, but all of my ultralight gear held up. I had hyperlight mountain gear, backpack, whatever. It all did fine. And I got numerous backhanded comments about the size of my backpack, and it was hilarious because there were people dropping out from injuries. These people are just, their backpacks are enormous here. And if you have a small backpack, you're gonna get a lot of shit for it. The smallest backpack I met was a guy named Billy. This guy wore sandals and carried a 2.5 kilo backpack all the way across the country and was just fine. And he got way more ridicule than I did at my 15-pound backpack, 16-pound, whatever it is, 7.5 kilo. So if you are carrying a smaller bag, you're gonna get a lot of guff from people in the huts, at camp, and whatever else. I assume we get the opposite in the United States for the people with the big backpacks. They get tons of shit from people. But I was consistent all the time. Every single interaction I had, people would be, oh wow, your backpack, it's so small. And it's just not a part of the culture here yet. Ultralight gear is very expensive as well. So if you wanted to replace some of your gear here, you're gonna have to pay for it. But yeah, a small backpack, very controversial. It was the talking point of almost every night in the hut, and how unprepared I was and how likely I would be to die if there was a storm. So that got a bit annoying. Make your backpack look big, but keep it light. And number 8, people sleep with their food here. Not everyone, the smart ones do. They have a crazy rodent problem here. Not like rats and mice, but possums. And not the North American possum either. Those little dumb things that eat trash all the time. Completely different. They sound horrifying. They look a little weird. And they come at you from all angles. They're climbing in trees, they're super curious, and they want your food. They're intrusive. They will come into your tent. I've heard numerous stories of people getting these possums chewing through their bug net, breaking into their tent. Keep an eye on your food at all times. This is similar to grizzly country, but less dangerous. Grizzly country, obviously, that's a whole nother procedure to get into, but you don't sleep with your food in grizzly country. You keep your food as far away from you as you possibly can. I used a DCF bag that was a roll top, and it reduced the smell. Maybe you could use another smell-proof bag. They make some rodent-proof bags as well that are mesh. The possums are horrendous. You will get, do not encourage them, do not feed them. They are nocturnal, they come at night, and they will bother you all of the time. Sleep with your food, take good care of your food. There's so many people in the huts leaving food out, but I used a DCF bag with a roll top to keep the smell away, and I had no problems throughout the time. So I brought my food in the tent, which is that is so scary and weird to me. Those are the 8 things that I wish somebody would have told me about before I started this. With any through hike, this is my first one. There's a learning curve no matter what. If you've done a through hike before or a long trail, you might already know some of this stuff, especially if you're from New Zealand, you know all this stuff. So that's fine, but it was a bit of a learning curve. Brand new country for me, all sorts of new stuff. I hope this helps you. If you have questions about any of the stuff that I went over, drop a comment. I'll make a video about it. I want to talk about it. I want to make a hitchhiking video. And in order to get through some of this off-trail depression, I might as well just start putting content out for you guys. So if there's anything you want to see or specific questions about TA in general, let me know and we'll get into it. So that's been my experience. It was a blast. Till next time.